All right, so today we thought about doing something a little bit different. I talked to Matt about this in our last meetup, saying, what about if we do something workshop related, turbo related? And I was like, okay, let's do it. Let's just put something together. So this is the first workshop I think we do ever, or at least in the last few years. So it's going to be a bit of an experiment. So I hope it works out well. So if you have your laptop, and I realize that maybe some of you don't have one, that should be okay. You can pair with someone. That would be a nice opportunity to get to know someone. I will also be presenting everything here. So if you're not keen on coding after work or whatever, I will be showing everything and guiding you through every step of the way. But do pair with someone. It's going to be fun. So today's workshop is about Turbo. So first up, go to my GitHub account and clone this repo. So Pinzon Julian is my handle, and turbo-101. Yes, I should be able to put that in Slack. Totally.
Are you Wi-Fi or?
No, we don't have Wi-Fi. You have to tether from your phone. Fortunately, you don't need a lot of internet for the rest of the meetup, just for getting your computer set up. We realized a bit late, maybe, that we should have published a bit more in more places that this would be a workshop, because maybe not everyone knew that it was going to be a workshop. So we apologize for that. But again, pair with someone, you'll get the gist of it anyway. So while everyone is cloning the repo, I will just tell you why I'm here and some stuff about these technologies that I think will be interesting as a foundation to what we're doing. So we're going to be using Rails, very vanilla Rails. I started this app last night, so it's as fresh as it can be. And it's using all of the core technologies that Rails comes with. So Rails and Hotwire for the front end. Hotwire is a collection of different JavaScript libraries that you can actually use in any framework, but they're like very tightly integrated with Rails, but they're completely backend framework agnostic. And they just let you add a lot of interactivity without writing any JavaScript, or while writing very, very little JavaScript. Today, we will write, I think, one line of JavaScript for everything that we're going to do. Yes. No, we're not going to hit on JavaScript. We love JavaScript, but we love JavaScript in the right places. We'll use it for what it's seals, please. So that's the first intro here. The second bit I wanted to sort of bring forward is that Rails is a framework that is based on sort of like the old school way of doing things, which is render HTML on your server and then push it to the browser. The browser should know how to render that HTML. It's completely different from the paradigm of modern JavaScript frameworks where you render the HTML actually in the browser. So it's a completely different paradigm. And if you've been doing any web development in the past few years, you'll be used to the paradigm of sending something over the network that's not HTML, maybe JSON through a REST API, through GraphQL or whatever, and then letting the front end do all the stuff. This is not it. We're going to do things as if it was 2010, very old school. But it's not going to feel old school. It's going to feel very interactive, very fresh, and some of the stuff that you might think you need React for or a front-end framework for, you'll realize today that you actually don't. The next piece is that Turbo and Rails work, because it's server-side rendered HTML, they work very tightly with the spec of HTML and the web in general. So status codes are important. We're not going to use much of that today because there aren't many forms today to work with. But just bear in mind that anytime you do something with Turbo and Rails, you have to be mindful of the status code you return, because many things within the frameworks are based on the status codes being correct. So if you do a redirect, the status has to be see other. If you render a form that has errors, you have to say that the content is unprocessable, right? So you have to be strict about it. And it's interesting because it pushes you to learn more about the platform and not specific things about a framework. So that is something that I'm kind of like thankful for in using Turbo and using Rails, because it pushes you to just understand the specs. And if you do, then everything works like a charm. So is anyone not set up yet? Is anyone set up yet? Have you? OK. So it's a plain vanilla Rails app. If you just pull the content, bin setup, as the README says. The README was written by AI, so let's see if it works. But you should be able to just run bin setup, and your app should be working correctly. Oh, damn.
Mine didn't. Mine worked.
I should be.
It looks black, but if you are, don't worry about it. We'll just forget about it.
Yeah, but it says that I am. Yeah, I should be. Right? That's yeah.
Don't worry. Not an issue.
Okay, cool. So raise your hand if you've got the app running. Okay, not many people with laptops have the app running. So if your laptop and your app is running, help your neighbor and help them set it up, please.
Is that what it's supposed to look like if they're running? Or
It's not like the landing page is this, so you should be able to see, you're good. If you go to /orders, then you'll see what I'm working on. I didn't have time to make a navigation, but we can let AI do one for us. Cool. So bin setup should prepare everything for you and also run the seeds. So you should have seeds with random stuff for us to work with. All right. So raise your hand if you're having issues with your setup. It's taking a second. OK. All right. So while we get everyone set up, I'll do a little bit of a tour of the story of what we're going to build today. So this app has 2 pages, basically. This page is a page of orders. It's a basic table with some filters and some buttons and links to do stuff. And the idea is that this is like a list of orders for, let's say, like a warehouse, where you have to get an order and it has different status. So received, preparing, packing, ready for pickup, delivered, or canceled. Like just like a normal kind of like, let's say, flow for an order to be like picked up and delivered to someone. That's piece number 1, so you can access that if you go to /orders. And if you go to the root page, you'll see something that doesn't look very interesting. You might see other numbers. You might see that I've been iterating over this for a while, so maybe I have bigger ideas than you. Yeah, but this is supposed to be like a dashboard, like would be like on a big screen on the warehouse, right? And it's like, okay, what's being received, what's preparing, what's packing, what's ready for pickup, right? So the idea is for us to build something that, for this page, that would automatically and dynamically update anytime something happens somewhere else. Maybe someone clicks a button, maybe you run a script and move things around, maybe someone pushes a button somewhere else. That should fully change this page in one swift go. And then if you go to the orders page, which is something that someone would have on a laptop to just maybe look for stuff, we should be able to filter by the order ID, the status, the customer name, maybe go and see the customer, maybe go see the order details, or maybe cancel an order. So this app is built with Tailwind. Does anyone not know what Tailwind is? Tailwind CSS. OK, everyone knows what Tailwind is. OK, it's built with Tailwind, but on top of Tailwind, we're using something called Daisy UI. So Daisy UI is a library built on top of Tailwind that just gives you a bunch of classes that look beautiful and that have animations and whatnot. It's basically Bootstrap for the new era. but it's really good. Like it gives you the best of both worlds. It just makes everything that you need, like you can reach it very easily. And if you need to reach for Tailwind, it's already there. So if you need nice UI, easy for something, I'll just show you something random like a card. You've got all the classes to do this, and you can change them and enhance them with CSS or with Tailwind. It just works. So that's what I did to build this UI that you see today. All right, is everyone set up? Anyone still setting up? Anyone looking to pair? Nice, thank you. Okay, cool. Yes, we got it. Nice. Okay, that was surprisingly fast and good. Every time you do a workshop, it's like 2 hours setting up, and then you can't do anything else. So I'm very glad it was easy. That's what Rails gives you. It's just easy out of the box. So you might have clicked around some stuff, but I'll just do a little bit of a tour. So this is as janky and vanilla 2010 Rails application that you could get. Like you click an order, and then you go to see the order, and then you cancel an order, and then you see a form to cancel the order. Doesn't look very good. And then if you enter an ID 167, you have to actually go and click a button to make it work. Not great. Not the best experience. So what we're going to do is take this and make it interactive and feel like a single page application by using some of the tools that Turbo gives us and that Stimulus gives us. And also, as an aside, you should be on the latest commit in main, but if you want to explore this application, you'll see that there is a repo where Rails is installed. Then I squashed everything for the full application that was working, and then I removed everything, like step by step. So you'll see at each point everything I removed to get to the most bare bones state of the app. So if you want to explore this on your free time, or if you're stuck at some point, you can go look at a commit. If you use RubyMine, then it's super easy to go look at, that's a spoiler, but you can go look at stuff if you want. So to navigate this code base, this is a very vanilla Rails application, so it should be very familiar to anyone who knows Rails. We have a model for an order and a model for a customer. So if we go to the schema super quickly, the customer has a name and has some preferences, and the orders have a status and they are associated to a customer. As simple as it gets. The next part is controllers and routes. So I wrote all of this for you so you wouldn't have to deal with any of this in this workshop. But this is the most essential skill that you have to learn to work with Rails and Turbo. It's writing good routes. If your application's routes are well structured and you can understand them well, and they follow the conventions of Rails resource routing, that is, every controller has only 7 actions and only those 7 actions, your life is going to be so much easier. And at work, we have some places that are just like this, which are beautiful, and some places that are not, and it's a pain. So I encourage you to think about resources. I have, I'm going to plug my new website that I'm building here. I have a set of articles teaching you how to do that. So how to design applications with Rails, and I think one of these is probably a deep dive on the routes. So julianpinzon.com, you can go there. There's a very in-depth explanation on how to write routes like this. So why do I care so much about routes? Oh, sorry. You can go to Rails info routes to see the routes of your application. And Up has sponsored Rails, and they have now a route in Rails. No, I'm kidding. But when I go to my routes and I can read the path of a route and completely understand what it does, I know that I've designed good routes. So I know that there's an orders path for my index of orders. I know that there's an order details path, so order singular, so I made it so that it was singular, and details path, like this is my measure of, is an application well designed from its controllers all the way to the view. So Rails info routes for looking at the routes and just like searching through your routes.
Maximum
Anton,
depth for the routes.
is that what sorry?
Maximum depth.
Uh,
Routes limit or
use your best judgment. The Rails routes say 2. Sometimes that's not possible. We go sometimes to 3 at BuildKite, I think 3 or 4 at some places where we actually need that depth. You can also collapse the routes with some helpers in the routes. I won't get into any of that, but maybe 2. Keep it at 2 at maximum if you can. Cool. So let's actually get started. So there's several things you can do here. So let's start with this page, and let's start with these actions that we have here. So the cancel and order. So when you design an application with Ruby on Rails and Turbo, start by making it janky. So start by making everything a page of its own. So that's why this application is starting just like that. So order details, janky page, cancel order, full page. We don't want that. We want that to be like more dynamic, staying on this page to do everything. So in order to do that, I'm going to teach you a technique, and then you're going to do part of it on your own. So if we go to app, views, orders, we have something that's called the actions menu. And that is what renders these 2 buttons. So I'm going to bring up my notes because I don't want to type everything and make mistakes. But essentially, what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to use the platform, how to use the browser to not write JavaScript, to make interactive popovers. This is new technology that's come in the browsers in the last couple of years. And it allows you to do a lot of stuff that we had to use like front-end frameworks for. The browser now gives us all of that. So the basic setup is the following. You need a button. And that button says, let's say, order details, right? So let's just say this is a type button. And then we get this little button, right? I'm going to bring up the docs because I think every time I teach something to someone, I like to also teach how to navigate the docs and how to navigate to the actual stuff, because it's important to do that. So every time I need to learn something about the platform, MDN for the Mozilla Developer Network, and then whatever term I want to learn. So Popover API, go look at that. This is a beautiful new API that browsers have. So what does this allow us to do? This allows us to have elements in our DOM that appear as popovers. So if you have popover, so if you have a button and some random div that pops over, you are able to connect these 2 things together. But how do you make it so that the button knows what thing to open? In other times, you would need to reach out for a jQuery. Last year, you would have to reach out for stimulus. Today, the platform gives that to you. So I realize that I sound like a salesman when I say that. So there are 2 new attributes that you can add to buttons. One is command, and the other one is command for. Basically, you're telling the browser, execute this command for this thing, and then it'll be executed, right? So if you say show popover, and I'm going to copy and paste some stuff because I'm sure I'm going to get this wrong. I'm not used to this because we haven't fully implemented this at BuildKite. But if I say, when I click this button, execute the show popover command, and do that for the div with ID test, I'm doing this by heart, so by memory, so let's see if it works. Do you see that? Top left, hello. I'm going to do it again. So I'm going to refresh the page. I'm going to click order details. Remember, 0 JavaScript. Click, and this thing appears. So now we have something that appears on the page and reacts to me clicking it without writing JavaScript. So you thought you were going to learn Turbo and Stimulus today. We're barely going to write any Stimulus because of this, right? Easy. But then why does this thing appear like all the way up there? Yeah. So I'm going to put this in several lines just to make it easier. You have a command, and you have a command for something. I'll show you where to find what commands are available in a bit. Or maybe you can do that in your own time. I'm just going to show you. But command for, that connects your button to some element in the DOM. This is just beautiful. Just 0 JavaScript, full interaction. The problem with this is that the popover, I should say, I'm going to explain something else to you, another concept. And is that, you know how if you've written dialogues or popovers in JavaScript, you know that fighting with the sort of like the depth of the element is super hard. So how do you make it sit on top of absolutely everything else? That's a pain in the ass. So now the browser has something that's called the top layer. So when I click, I think it's going to work, but when I click this, you'll see that top layer appears here. The top layer is something that sits on top of the actual DOM. It's a completely new tree where things will be completely on top of the rest of the content.
Not even a low Z score.
No, nothing Z index, whatever, no. So the top layer now has a div that has a backdrop, and if you reveal it, then you see that this is the element. So this is taken out of the DOM and put on top, completely on top. So for popovers, for dialogues, the browser already does all of that for you, right? It's beautiful. But then the positioning, this is the new problem. So how do you connect one thing that is in like the ground level with something that is in level 1, right? That's not that simple. By default, the browser is just going to put it like in 0, 0. That's not what we want. We want things to be tethered together, like connected to one another. That's why we use the anchor positioning API. So anchor positioning is another new CSS. This is a CSS feature that allows you to connect one element to another in the DOM. And this API, I really do not know by heart, but so I'm going to copy and paste some code and explain it to you. But essentially, you set an anchor. Imagine like an anchor from a ship. Like something has an anchor that just tethers you to something else, right? So now I'm going to copy and paste stuff because I'm not going to remember this. I'm sorry. This is the... I'm going to start not with this one. I'm going to start with another one. So this is order insights. Yeah. So I'm going to start with this just because I think it's a bit easier. So I'm going to switch gears to working on this customer name over here. So let me just delete this thing. But it's the same concept. I think it's just easier to explain that first. So the idea is that when I click on here, I want this to appear as a popover. You know how in GitHub you hover over someone's name and like a little card appears? I want to do something similar with this so that we know that Linda has some preferences that likes the whatever ribbon in her packaging and whatever. I got AI to write this for me. So we want to click this and we want to pop over to open. So instead of having a link that just takes me somewhere else, we're going to comment this out, and I'm going to paste this little thing. So, yeah, no, don't worry. Maybe I'm going to show you how it works, and then I'll show you how it's done. And then you can take this to build the order details and the cancel order button. So, ta-da, content missing. But we have something. Content missing, maybe someone who knows Turbo might know that this is a Turbo frame-related thing, but let's just get the actual popover working first. So let's look at some stuff. I'm using some ERB here just to like calculate some ID that I would use, that I'll use in many places here. So maybe you're used to using something called DOM ID. In Rails 8, I think, or 8.1, we got something called DOM target. It's basically the same thing, just that you can pass multiple objects to it. So this will create, I'm going to show you here, if I go into the DOM, it'll create, see, order something, customer something, insights. That comes from DOM target for an order, for a customer, and just give it this extra string at the end. That's because I might have other IDs on the page that are for the order and the customer, but for other purpose. So you can use DOM target to just generate a string based on these objects. Right, so back to our setup. We've got a button, and then we've got a command, show popover, and we wanna use that command for a particular thing in my DOM that has this ID, right? And then you can see that I have a div here that I've said you are a popover with this ID, and that connects the two things together. Right, so I'll pause for a second for all of you to maybe type this. No, because if you type it, then it's going to get burned into your brain. Okay, I'll copy and paste it. Let's say...
Is anchor positioning so new that they don't have tailwind classes for it?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'd not heard of it.
Yeah, you gotta be in the right circles. Cool. So go add that to the customer insights popover partial. Oh, sorry, I forgot the identifier. You can type that one.
What are the minimum browser requirements?
Very, very good question. I'll show you. Remember how we used to use can I use? You can still use can I use to figure out if these things are supported. There is something new that there's a new way to determine if features in browsers are available to use, and it's called baseline. Baseline is these three little icons that you'll see on the web in documentation that will tell you if a feature has limited availability, meaning it's not supported in every browser just yet. Newly available, which is it's supported in every browser, but it's very recent. And widely available, which means it's been in browsers for enough time for you to feel fully safe to use it. Some of these features are bleeding edge, but there are polyfills for them. They don't support absolutely every part of the spec, but they support enough for you to actually use it. So there's a company called Oddbird. They are the ones writing a lot of these polyfills, and they're amazing. So there's one for anchor positioning, for popover. You can just add them, and it just works. They are very well documented. Some pieces don't work. They're upgrading the specs because the specs have changed a little bit through the years. But for the most part, you can put the polyfill in, and it works.
Does the Mozilla documentation show also which versions of the browsers?
I don't think they've integrated it yet. So you'll have to sort of look for that a little bit more. This is fairly new stuff, so not everyone has adopted this standard. Okay, so I'm sure that everyone has copied stuff, and you can now click. Yeah, I'll put it up. And while I do that, I'll explain the anchor positioning stuff. So the div that serves as our popover has some inline styles, just because I wanted everything to be in the same place. So we have a CSS property called position anchor, and this is how you name your anchor. And you can tell that the button uses that same anchor name, right? So that's how you tie the two things together. So you name an anchor, and then you use the anchor. But then, Oh, okay. So I'll leave it at that, and then I'll show you something very cool. I'll wait for 1 sec for everyone to copy stuff, and then I'll also get some water. So this is now the CSS meetup, it seems.
It is like Bootstrap though. That's the class for the.
Yeah, the drop down
Yeah,
and BTN. Yeah, it's Daisy. Cool. So one of the big things about positioning stuff on the browser, and if you use some like libraries that used to do this before or that still do this, is that you have to create some sort of algorithm to position things in the window so that when things are off screen, they sort of like nudge them over and put them in a place where you can actually see them. That is all now part of the browser, and that is called, that's part of the Anchor Positioning API. It's called the Position Try Fallbacks property. So you can, oh, Jesus Christ, you're too helpful. There are fallbacks. So you can say in the block direction, so that is top to bottom, flip it, try to flip it if it sort of collides with something. And in the inline direction, same thing. So if it collides to the right, flip it. If it collides to the bottom, flip it. And then it should just position itself smartly. So it's like very, very cool. So I'm going to show you that. I'm going to close that for a second just to show you. So you can see that this one opens below, this opens below, this opens below, but this one opens above. Right? And it's like the amount of JavaScript that we had to write for this, the amount of dependencies that we had to use for this, is ridiculous. And now it's just free for us to use.
If you scroll, it stays on the anchor and just fine like it tracks. What?
It is connected to the button. That's why it's an anchor. Imagine it's a ship with an anchor. It stays with the anchor.
That's great.
It's amazing. So zero JavaScript for all of this. But what we really want is the actual content, right? We want the customer insights to live here. So that is the next piece of the puzzle. And this is where we start to learn about Turbo. So just a quick checkpoint. Is everyone with me? Who's not with me? Anyone still
We're logging into Slack.
logging into Slack? Go again?
I'm having problems with CSS. It's not flipping.
It's not. Are you using Chrome?
Yes.
Latest Chrome?
Yeah.
Oh, you might be missing this bit. Yeah, I suggest using Chrome for this. Chrome is going to have most of the latest features. Yeah, no. Yeah, so that's why these are a little bit bleeding edge. I didn't add the polyfills. Maybe I should have added the polyfills. But yeah, for this, if you have Chrome, let's use Chrome because it's going to be everything that I present today works well in Chrome. But yeah, polyfills are your friend for this. You can add them for a few years and then remove them. You'll still be writing the best code you can just with polyfills. Okay. Am I okay to continue? 3, 2, 1. All right, I'll continue. So the next piece of this puzzle is how do you load content inside of this? So for that, we're going to create a JSON endpoint, and we're going we're gonna use Turbo for this. So let's go to the docs for Turbo. So turbo.hotwire.dev. Turbo is one of the libraries that comes by default with Rails these days. We're going to go to the reference. The reference is where you'll find all of the, let's say, like the low-level documentation. The documentation for Turbo, it's not the best. It's not bad, but it's a bit different from any other doc that you see online. So it's like written in prose, different from other stuff that's more searchable or more easy to navigate. So it takes a while to get the hang of it. But we're going to use frames. So what are turbo frames? I'm going to do a little bit of an explanation, and here you can see where I planned this workshop. So if you have a zoom, okay. If you have your DOM window and you navigate and you have a normal Rails application with Turbo, it'll just do its thing, bring the new page, navigate like normal. So when we do this and we go to the cancel order, it's for the most part like a regular application navigation, as if it was like an application with no framework. In reality, Turbo is taking the DOM and like swapping it in real time for you. So it doesn't feel like janky. You don't have to think much about it, it just works. I'm not gonna dive into that because that's sort of like a bit too basic for this workshop, but sometimes you don't want the whole page to navigate. You want to navigate a smaller piece of it. So that is what a turbo frame does. So if I have a turbo frame, which if you're interested, this is actually a web component under the hood. This is a web component. We can look at it, but it is a web component. It's basically, imagine like an iframe, but not an iframe. It's the best explanation. No, so it just contains a piece of your application, and any navigations that happen within that little box will stay in that box. So anything you request from within the frame, as long as the response also has the same frame or the same frame ID, it'll navigate the content within it. Is that clear? So any navigation that happens within the frame stays within the frame. So why is that interesting? Because for this specific case, we can say, hey, for the content of this popover, it's not the whole page that I want to go to. I just need you to bring me this little piece and put it inside of this frame, contain it, right? So we're going to say turbo frame tag. This is just a helper that renders the actual web component. You don't have to think much about it, but renders an HTML tag with an ID. So order.customer insights. So this is going to use this thing under the hood to say like DOM target for the order customer insights. So it's basically the same as this or very similar. And then load that from this URL. So if before we had this link, let's go back. If before we had this link that took us here, what we're going to say is instead of fully navigating us, just bring us this little piece of code. So this is why I told you start with the full page navigation. You'll always be able to compress it down to whatever UI you want, but everything should be a full page in the scheme of your application. So I'm going to comment this. And then we already have this, but then if we refresh this and click, it's going to say content missing. This is the most common error when you work with turbo frames. What this means is that, and I think we get an error here in the console as well. Let's look at it. The response, 200, did not contain the expected turbo frame with this ID and will be ignored. To perform full visit, blah, blah, blah. We don't care about that. We know we want a frame. So the problem here is that the response needs to have a matching frame so that when Turbo or the browser receives that response from the server, it says, oh, you navigated from a frame with this ID and you give me a response with the same ID. So that's how it says, okay, I'm only going to care about whatever is inside of the Turbo frame, nothing else. It's just making sure that you have the right IDs. So if we do this and then we go to the controller, I'm going to show you the controller for orders, not for orders, for customers, order insights. You'll see that I'm loading a customer just like any other Rails controller. Again, your show action, your 7 RESTful actions, very important here. And then what we have to do is create or serve this from the same turbo frame with the same ID that we have in here. So turbo frame tag for the customer insights. So I'm going to just copy this. So because I loaded my customer in my controller, I have this. So for the customer insights, just put everything in that frame. So how does that look? I click here. Hey, we've got a popover with content loaded from the server. Fully interactive. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I know it looks dumb, but it's ridiculously powerful what you can do with a tiny sprinkle of turbo.
Can we do it on Hovel like GitHub?
We could, but not today. Yeah. So turbo frame tag, add customer insights, and then put everything inside.
This is fantastic. Yeah, I discovered this here as well.
Mm-hmm.
Turbo tags, I use it, and I think I start to overuse it. Do you have any advice? Because if you put a turbo tag, and then you put another turbo tag, and it's like a link, put this over. It kind of takes this line off.
Yeah.
Do you have an advice? How many turbo tags do you have?
I don't think I have a rule, but I have a story. At BuildKite, you know the build page for a build in BuildKite, if you use BuildKite, the build page is written in React. It's a very complicated React application. So when it first loads, it loads with a normal sort of like page request. It renders a React component. And then within that, we have turbo frames. So we have opened windows into Rails within the complexity of the React single page stuff. So for the stuff that we really need to use React, we are going all in, and it's a fucking pain to work with because it's a lot of stuff. It's very complicated. But then we open a little window, and then teams can go and work super easily within the complexity of that, but without having to touch it. So we are actually nesting turbo frames within React components that actually also render React components within the frames and sometimes other frames. Like you need to keep it in check, but it is a very powerful technique to nest these things. I'm going to do maybe a talk about that, or I'll get the team to do a talk about that, because that technique that we develop is the speed of development that we have now. It's ridiculous.
I want to see that talk.
It's going to be, and it's not that weird. It's just a turbo frame, and then that's it. You just open the window. It's very cool. Nice. So we've got this thing going. So if you click outside, you don't have to write JavaScript for the click outside. It just does it, and that's it. So I'm going to show you something a little bit different, shorter but different, because I don't think we're going to have too much time to go through everything that I planned for today. So I'm going to show you a few other good little nuggets of things that you can do. You can also go back to the commit. Yep. You can also go back in the Git history and actually see the whole page, the whole application finished after this. But I want to move us onto this page. I wanted to make this a little bit more beautiful, but I didn't have enough time. So if we imagine we're in this warehouse and we're all in a conveyor belt, like packing stuff and doing things, and we have like this big TV, and we want to see our stuff moving. So if we put one packet and we push a button, we want this to move. Our production line manager wants to see things moving, and maybe, I don't know, you had glasses to make things that look stale or broken, whatever. You can do a bunch of stuff here. But what we want is for this to be interactive. So whenever something happens, this page reacts to those changes. So I'm going to explain the next concept here. Okay. So we've got our server over here, right? And usually for an action to be performed on a very traditional way, you have to maybe click a button here, Oh, that's a very Yankee button. You click a button, that goes to the server, and then that returns some response, right? But sometimes you don't want there to be an action on the browser that you perform. You want the browser to, or the server to proactively tell the browser to do stuff, right? In Rails, we do that with WebSockets. That's a core browser technology. And with Action Cable, which is the framework that sits beneath all of that. But the nice thing about Rails is that there are layers of abstraction on top of that so that you don't have to think about Action Cable. You don't have to think about managing the connections. You just use another web component, and Rails will connect your browser to your server seamlessly. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to manage the connection manually. So what are we going to do? We're going to do something where we instruct the page to connect to the server via WebSockets, and then we're going to instruct the model to send messages as the model changes, as a record changes. So when an order changes, if there's a browser that's connected, then our server will automatically, without you knowing or without you like paying much attention, perform a job, an async job, a background job, that will then send a message to the browser. That's what's happening under the hood, but you don't have to think much about it. So how are we going to make this work? Let's go first to the order model. And then here I'm actually, before we dive in, I'm going to show you the code base for Turbo Rails. Turbo Rails is Rails's, let's say, helpers and abstractions on top of Turbo to be used with Rails. Turbo is a framework agnostic. It's a framework agnostic framework. So you can use Turbo with Django, with Laravel, with Kotlin. I helped shape the implementation for Kotlin at Cash App when I worked there. They use that for their admin pages. So the thing is that this is not, again, the documentation is the code. There's no online documentation for this, which is not great, but the code is really well documented. So if you actually just dive into the code and understand it, the documentation is great. Just like Rails's code is well documented, this is the same. So if you go to app, this is like a normal Rails application in a sense. You have helpers, and then you'll see some of the helpers here. For example, the frames helper is where you get the Turbo frame tag. So that's how you know how to use it. Just navigate to this part of the code base. But we're not going to start with helpers. We're going to start with models. So if we go to models, and I think this is within a concern, broadcastable. You can make things that are broadcastable. And there are a bunch of methods here that are added to active record objects to allow them to send messages to your browser automatically. So in here, we should find something called broadcast refresh. Another later. So we're going to use this one, broadcast refresh 2. This is going to send an instruction to the browser to refresh itself. So every time this changes, actually it's as if you hit this button, kinda, in a way. It sounds like dumb because it's very simple, but it actually makes the page very reactive. I'm going to just make sure I copy this correctly because I don't want to mess it up, but we're going to use this. We're going to broadcast with an S, refreshes 2. This is a lambda that ignores the argument. I want to like maybe put a PR for Rails because sometimes you don't want any arguments here. It would be nice to say just like dashboard or something, but whatever. This is the syntax that I found that works. So what we're saying here is that this model will send updates to something called dashboard. All right? Everyone following? Cool. So the next piece is going to the actual dashboard. And we're going to add a few sort of directives here. So we're going to say turbo stream from dashboard. So that is how we connect those two pieces, right? And then we're going to tell the page not to just do a normal refresh as if we just like click the button, because in some cases that kind of like feels janky. What we're going to tell it is that it should refresh by morphing the page, and that it should preserve the scroll should you like scroll the page. That is, maintain the page scroll, and then don't fully replace it. Just do like a diff between the incoming DOM and the DOM right now, and just change the pieces that are different. This is morphing. This may remind you of like the virtual DOM in React and that stuff. This is basically a similar technology, but working with the real DOM, not with virtual DOMs. So how do we test that this works? So I'm going to put this here. I'm going to put this here. And I'm going to move this and open a Rails console. I'm going to find an order. So let's do 1035. 35. And I'm going to just store this in a variable. So I have an order here. And I'm going to do order.update status. And I'm going to say preparing. So keep your eyes peeled. If I copied everything correctly, this should move here. All right, 1, 2, 3. Right, and then you can see some of that stuff here happening. So a job wasn't queued to broadcast something, and it's performing using solid cable, performing the stream job, and it just works. And you can use this not just by like modifying your model, because yeah, I know that as you scale, you put less and less stuff in your models. You can make objects broadcastable with that concern. So if you have an active model or a normal pure Ruby object, you can just tell it that it is capable of broadcasting stuff. So yeah. When I go try it out in your laptops, I'm gonna put it side by side so you can copy stuff.
The last time I played around with this was like before the morphing, and then this client would listen for like the WebSockets, and the model would actually send a new object like HTML over the wire. All this is saying is, all right, no, there's updates, refresh.
Yeah, so
it's two trip, like it's not actually sending the data.
No, it's not sending the data. It's sending an instruction to refresh.
Right.
That is much easier because, for example, if there are things that require authentication in your page, authenticating within a web request, it's a solved problem. If you're authenticating within an actual cable stream, that is much more difficult. So you reduce the complexity a lot if you just instruct the page to just go refresh itself, because it's going to be a normal request. It's going to be authenticated by the session of the user. So that simplifies things a lot.
You also have to bury your templates a lot deeper before than you would have wanted.
In what, sorry?
Before, like when you were just sending the updates over WebSockets, you
Uh-huh.
have to bury your templates pretty deep.
Uh-huh.
Almost, you have to couple them with another one.
Oh, yeah.
So
Totally. Much easier. So there's a talk by one of the people who worked on this library on the refresh part that they sort of explain. I'm going to sort of make the same graphic that they did in the talk. They talk about how making Rails applications with these technologies is like a spectrum, right? Where you have happiness here on this axis. Whoa, that's thick. And you have complexity here, I think. Or the other way around, I can't remember. The point being that Turbo Drive is the most happy and the least complex. Then you can do stuff. Then you have Turbo Frames. Turbo Frames are still quite happy, but they add a little bit of complexity to your code. Then there are Turbo Streams. which are much more complex and maybe make your life a little bit harder because you have to maintain a lot of those granular changes to a page. But between all of this, there is a lot of complexity you can handle while still being happy with morphing. So you think less of frames, you think less of streams, you just tell the page to react to changes. So it's a graphic sort of like this. Maybe I'll post a screenshot later. But this is the whole idea. If you can keep things with turbo drive and turbo refreshes, maybe frames, you can do so many things that so much easier than just being so granular about your changes. It is complex, and when you dive and do very like other stuff, it can become hard to manage, and the morphing algorithm sometimes is a little bit finicky. So you do have to learn the ropes. But like with anything, like this just gets you a lot farther, much faster. And then what you have to learn is when it actually becomes very complex, which is the same with any technology.
I think the trade-off with morphing is the fact that you are still getting a bigger HTML load from the backend. If you have a much more complex dashboard, it's going to take a little bit longer.
Yeah, so that's why I sort of made that comment at the beginning about Rails being very close to the specs, because the idea is for you to use the specs to cache information. So if you use e-tags, then you're able to cache information at the CDN level, for example. So if you have a request to a dashboard, you can say, okay, just cache it in the CDN of my application every minute. So every request for a minute is going to go straight from the CDN and not to your application. So you can do a lot of very smart caching because you're using the platform very closely. So it is, yes, but you can be smart about caching as well.
There are little variants too, though, because like you've still got turbo on the front end, and it doesn't dip, gets the full load. The user doesn't see anything until like these changes.
One thing I've done that kind of helps with that as well is instead of refreshing the whole page, write a little turbo stream action custom to refresh a certain turbo frame.
Mm-hmm.
Then if you're checking which turbo frame kicked it off, you might just render. This is in a case of a page like dashboard style thing with many records. It's like when one record gets updated, it want to update everything.
Yeah, I think the trade-off on that one, what Rudy was saying was authentication. Because if your session, user in session, how do you then pass that around to say?
Oh, but you're still morphing, and it's still going to be a request to the
When you send a partial, right, or rather morph the whole page, if you want to just send a screen just for partial, and it's for authenticated user, then it becomes even more tricky.
In this case, HTML isn't going over the WebSocket connection. That's just the a something's changed, refresh the turbo frame, and then the turbo frame itself goes back to the controller with the user's cookies session and doesn't actually get.
Yeah, it's super powerful. I'm gonna sort of cut in the conversation because I want to finish some stuff. But yeah, you should do a talk about that. So now we have a fully reactive page. I hope you were able to copy this stuff. If not, go back to the commits. You're gonna be able to copy that. And we have maybe half an hour more, I think. So I think we'll be able to do one more thing that does involve stimulus. So let's go back to this orders page. And let's talk about this filtering. So if I want to filter something, I don't want to just have to type the whole thing, then press return or click search. It's just, no one has enough time to do that in life. So let's make it so that this form is reactive, so that when things change in the DOM, the page reacts to it. So I did not do this last night, so I'm going to be live coding this one, or a part of it. So the first thing we need is stimulus. So stimulus.hotwire.dev. This is the documentation. Again, the handbook is actually really nice if you're onboarding onto Stimulus. Go through the handbook. It's like a tutorial style handbook. It's really nice. It teaches you all the fundamentals of Stimulus. I strongly suggest you do it if you're not familiar, but we're going to talk about the reference. So we're going to have this handy here, and I'll come back to this as I do some stuff. So let's go to the orders index. Again, very conventional. And the first thing we'll do is that we will make it so that every time we submit this form does not perform a full page refresh. We want it to only refresh the table and the contents of the table, because that's the only piece of content that actually changes when the server returns a response. The actual form stays the same, so we don't need it to change. So to do that, we will, I'm going to just collapse a few things just to make it easier for me to do stuff. Table, cool. I don't know if this is the right place to put this, but we're going to do turbo frame tag. We're going to call it results. Right? So if you are following, let me know and I'll slow down. But I can do it and then you can repeat it if you want. So we're just going to put a turbo frame and wrap our page in a turbo frame. That means that any navigation within this will be navigated within the frame. Maybe this is going to break some of the stuff that we already did, but we'll see. Cool. So that is piece number one. The second piece is that we want the form, which is here, to be the driver for the frame. So if I have, for example, if I do this, if I, let's say, refresh this page, we're going to see turbo working wrong, but it's important. So now we have a turbo frame in this area of the page, right? Like in this table. If I click this link, because it is within the frame, Rails will make that navigation just happen within that frame, remember? So I'm going to click this, content missing, because it's just navigating that frame. So this is when you start to understand, okay, so if I have any link within this thing, any form that performs any action, it's just going to navigate that frame. So that's not what we want. We'll fix this later. But the reason why I told you that is because we can also drive that frame. When I say drive, it's just like make requests within that frame from outside the frame. So I can tell this form to drive the results frame. So that means same ID here. What this is saying is whenever this form is submitted, don't submit the form within the page. Just get the results and put them in the frame. Is that clear? Yes? Cool. So that is the first piece of this puzzle. Let's see if this works correctly. So then if I do this, received and search, it works. It doesn't look very different though, because we had this very similar behavior before. But maybe let's do something in the controller. You lose them, but you can add them back if you want. I'm going to do something, and I'm going to sleep for 2 seconds, or let's say 5, just to sort of like make my case. So if I enter a name, if I put Juli here, search, and keep typing, you'll see that I can keep typing, seconds. Like that sort of kind of proves that my frame was navigated while everything on top stayed the same. I wanted to add like a little counter or something, but I forgot. This is going to take 5 seconds, so let's remove this. Cool. So we are filtering by received right now, but what we want to do is to make this a little bit more dynamic. We want to be able to just click here, send the form, start typing, send the form, start typing, send the form. We want it to be like much more dynamic. So in order to do this, there is no browser API yet. Hopefully sometime soon we'll get something to make this. But what we'll do is we will create a stimulus controller. So stimulus is Rails' way of organizing your JavaScript. It's as simple as that. You're not going to have a huge jQuery file. You're just going to have little pieces of JavaScript organized for a particular purpose. So I'm going to create a controller here. So,
Framework agnostic to JavaScript.
oh yeah, you can use it with whatever. Yeah. So form controller.js. And again, I am going to copy and paste this. Remember how I told you we're going to just write a couple of lines of JS? These are the JavaScript we need. So what is this? This is us just saying, create a function called submit that I can then call from my HTML. This is how Stimulus works. So let's go to the docs to show you where to look for this. So if you go to actions, this is an example of an action. So in a button, you can put in a data action and say, whenever this button is clicked, go to the gallery controller and click and perform the function next, or the method next. That's basically what Stimulus does. It's just a way for you to declaratively say what action should be performed when an event happens in the browser. Remember how we used command and command 4, all declarative? Turbo uses the same principles. Actually, Turbo did that before command and command 4 happened. So they were a little bit ahead in trying to make things declarative in HTML. So using these same concepts, we can say in this form, we have form, method, data, and our data attributes have a turbo frame of results. We're going to also say that, not here, sorry, I was making a mistake. So we're going to say, let's start with the text field. It's going to make it a bit easier to understand. So if we have this, we're going to say data action, and I'm going to say form. I'm going to look at this again, submit. So you might be asking, what is the actual event that's happening? Turbo has some events that it triggers by default on certain elements. A button is always clicked, a select is always changed. So there are some standard things that you don't really have to write. So for an input field is the input event. So you don't really have to write it. You can if you want, but you don't have to. So I'm just ignoring that because I like to sort of use the defaults. So what's going to happen here, if we go to this, and hopefully I did everything right, if I type an L, it didn't work.
Did you do data controller?
Oh, I didn't. Thank you. That's what I was going to put here. Thank you. I have to say that the controller that is driving, that is controlling this form is the form controller. Thanks, Matt. Let's refresh this, and let's try it again. So if I type L, oh, it didn't work. Invoking action input form submit. This dot request submit is not a function. This dot element dot request submit. Maybe I missed that. Let's see. Live coding. I should have prepared this one. I do these ones a lot, like these kinds of forms. I'm like, I can just wing it. It bit me in the ass. Okay, there you go. I type. It sends a request. Let's see it here. Come again. I forgot to tell the form that it should use the form controller that we created. So I added the action, but I didn't tell the form that it should use the form controller.
Does that need to be a string?
The controller, I think it could be a symbol as well. Yes, this. So again, just to recap my mistake, so you don't make that mistake, we create a form controller that controls a form, and then we give an action to one of its inputs, saying whenever the input event fires on this input element, go to the form controller and submit it, and execute the submit function. So if we go here, we'll see that we'll have a flurry of events, one per each keystroke. We don't love that, right? The form controller, yes. Yeah, so I missed the element as well. So this is a reference to the controller itself. An element is the element where you place the data controller directive. Mm.
I never knew that you could do request submit on an input directly. Thought you had to go to the form.
You're doing it on the form.
It is on the form.
It is on the form because
But,
this,
sorry, but it delegates to the inputs form. Oh,
no,
sorry,
this dot
it's
element,
controller. Gotcha, sorry.
yeah,
Action is triggered
from the controller, from the form.
the element is still the form.
Right? So that is cool, but this is not nice. We're gonna DDoS ourselves if we just let people, like, each request, each keystroke be a request. So we know all how to fix this. We fixed this using debouncing. I like this one just because I think it feels like the same principles that Turbo uses to be declarative. So to use this one, let's see if there's an example here. It's just this debounced. So you just add this sort of listener, and it should work. Let's look for an example here. Basic usage, like this. So if we use debounce input, it should debounce stuff. I haven't used this library in a while. It's been updated, so let's see if it works. So let's use debounce input, and then form submit. You have the library installed already, so it should work for you. And if we refresh this page, clear this up, and then one keystroke, didn't work. Didn't work. Debounced input. No, sorry, I forgot one piece as well. I removed this. If I go to the application JS of my application, I need to add the debounce library. So I just forgot to add this. Come again?
Would there have been an error log there?
Probably. Let's see. I'm just like doing this not in order, so yeah, it's just not reading the right sort of event, so it's not even firing. So yeah, just so you can follow, in your application JS, import debounce from debounce and initialize it. I'll keep this here on the side. And then in your HTML, use debounced input. I'm going to switch for a second just to try it out, make sure you're not typing the wrong thing. I'm going to refresh my page, and then, oh, there it is. So I'm going to clear this up, and then I'm going to do many typing, many keystrokes. Just one request. You see that? I'm going to do it again. Many keystrokes. 3, 2, 1. One request. So now we're not going to DDoS ourselves. So that is a great question. What's your question? What's confusing you?
When
Okay, let me.
so when you pause typing, it goes to check.
Yeah, so it'll start recording every keystroke and wait for a little bit of time to see if you're going to type something else.
Like, I don't know what name.
Yeah, let's do it. So LIN. You see the request, the params, DA.
And it was sending one letter at a time before, but now it's like
It's not. It's like waiting, and then just sending the last request. Yeah, before it was. Let's see it again. If I just do this and clear this out, ASDF. But then if we put the debouncing back in, and we do ASDF, you just get a single request. All right? And again, all declarative. You don't have to like tune this by hand. And then we can add this same thing, this same submit the form, to other stuff. So to the number field as well. So we can do it here, comma, data, action, form, submit. Again, because this is a number field, which is an input field, it'll change on input. So then I can say 1067. That's a very poor example because I have this. And it didn't work, so there's something wrong. 10, 67. There it is, right? So very easily you can just determine which elements should be reactive. Maybe you don't want everything to be reactive, maybe some. You can just decide. And for the select, I have nightmares with selects.
Is the ID field an exact match?
What, sorry?
Is that an exact match in the ID field?
Yeah. So in my model, I have some filters, and it's just doing an exact match. I could do a fuzzy match as well. I didn't do it. I'm sorry. We could, for the name, we could. It's much easier like that. But the good thing is that all of that logic stays in the server. You don't have to replicate any of that filtering or whatnot in the browser. It's all in the backend. So let's do the select. And as I said, I have nightmares about this. If you struggle with this, it's fine. Everyone struggles with selects in Rails. I plan to address that. So action, form, submit. And again, because this is a select, the default event for a select is a change, so we don't have to write it. It's just kind of react on change. We refresh the page, received, preparing, canceled. So let's go back to this. This is all we wrote to have this super interactive application. I'm going to revert all of these changes and take you to the finished version, because I don't know that we have enough time to show you. But check out. But the next step of the anchor positioning stuff and the popovers and all that stuff that I wanted to show you today was, and this also has pagination. I didn't show you this, but this has pagination as well. Was this. So a little kebab menu, or like an ellipsis, vertical ellipsis menu with the order details and the cancel order, and then the order details. What? It's a drawer? Again, no JavaScript for this, just HTML and CSS. And the content is rendered in a turbo frame, just like we did with the popover for the name. It's the exact same technique. And for canceling an order, then this little model menu, same thing. This is a cancellations new form and a cancellations create when you create a cancellation. It's a bit of a shift in paradigm of how you name things, but that's how I decided to model this one. If I go back, this is closed. And if this one, that's delivered, and I cancel it, refresh the whole page, it could refresh and stay in place, but.
Would you mind showing the routes on the controller for the cancellation?
Yes.
Was that a Daisy modal?
Yeah, all Daisy. I didn't do any styles for this, just Daisy UI. It's beautiful. I'm gonna get to that, Matt, but 1 second. Just because we said Daisy, Daisy, let's have some fun. Daisy UI has a bunch of themes that are built in. So if we wanted to make our app look cyberpunk, then we can say cyberpunk. And then, I mean, it's nice.
I just have to say thank you to whoever said that.
Okay, that is a bit too intense. Let's go back to this. But Matt, you were saying routes. Yes. So again, I put a lot of effort into the routes. I suggest you do too. Your routes are your front end, are the first line of defense of your front end. If you keep your routes in check, if you make sure that everything is correctly named, if you stick to the 7 actions, even if it's a little bit constraining in the beginning, that constraint is very helpful, because anything you work on, you will know exactly what convention to follow. If it's a list of things, it's an index. If it's a single thing, it's a show. If you're editing something, it's a form for edit. To update it, it's the update action. To destroy it, it's destroy. Having that set of conventions is ridiculously powerful. It takes a while to get used to it. Not everything fits, but I assure you 97% of your routes, you can make them RESTful and they will work. So yeah, these are native dialogues. I don't think we have enough time for me to show you, but I'll just quickly, I won't be able to teach you, but I can show you really quickly the code. Similar to the stuff we did before, a DOM target, some buttons, a list that's a drop-down menu with some buttons as well that have commands to show a model for a particular model that we have here in these dialogues. This is a native dialog element. And as I showed you before, if you go to Elements and we open one of these, you'll see that the top layer appears, and we can see that there's a dialog in the top layer.
So that's part of the popover extensions?
Popover and dialog are two different things. They're very, very much related. Dialog is an HTML element. Popover is a property on HTML tags that you can use. Very closely related. You can use some of those sometimes interchangeably. So yeah, this, like, in order to make all of this, you need to learn maybe 2 or 3 good concepts. And then this is basically, I don't know, 95% of all applications nowadays. And then the extra 5% is where you use React, and then you go deep and do the hardcore stuff. But yeah, it gets you really, really far, really, really easily. Do check the compatibility, figure out which are your users. At BuildKite, I am trying to push this very hard because our users are the bleeding edge of technology companies in the world, so they're using better computers than me, so they must have the latest Chrome or whatever. So you do have to be mindful if those are not your users, if your browsers are not controlled in some way, if not, maybe it's a public-facing thing, it's not like an admin app or something, you might need to be more careful. But there are polyfills for all of the things that I showed today. So you should be able to use this safely for not all, but many scenarios. Any questions? Yeah.
So you know how you added turbo frame for results?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry. So you know how you added turbo frame for results? Could you use turbo morph as well? So if you just use turbo morph and submit the form, it will just change that part?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, and it actually looks really nice because the text kind of like fades.
Oh, okay.
I know it doesn't fade, but you can use view I wanted to add view transitions. I don't know if you know about this, but the browser now does native transitions. So you don't have to use crazy animation libraries. Now the browser does it for you. So you can actually like move things around incredibly easily.
In that case,
but yeah, morphing.
Would you lose context of where you are in your input field? So if
No, that's the whole point. Like morphing is aware of input fields and your cursor, so it won't morph wherever you are.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Hello. How do you test that with like different browser? Do you use like Capybara and like check with like Firefox?
That's a great question. For testing, because if you stick to sort of like these defaults and you just render HTML from the browser, most of the things are just request tests, like plain controller tests. I'll show you something that's. Let me see if I can find it easily. If not, I'll just tell the story.
Because I was using Firefox before, and one of the things didn't work as on Chrome. So.
But yeah, like you should definitely test. Have like maybe an end-to-end test of the whole thing.
Yeah, I had like the.
That's the Firefox hasn't caught up to Chrome yet. That's what
But then if you two ahead, and some people are still on Internet Explorer, so.
Surely we're done with that.
Let me check my memo.
I'm not sure if this is the one, but this at least I can tell the story. So. Rails is on a journey of simplifying its testing sort of recommendations. System tests are no longer generated by default when you generate a new Rails application and generate a new controller. Before, the default was for you to test everything with a system test or a feature spec in RSpec. That is no longer the recommendation. At BuildKite, I've been doing this for maybe about a year or more now, where most of my tests are just request specs in RSpec or just controller functional tests for controllers, where I just send a request and then I can test the DOM very easily. No, not very easily. That's kind of the problem that this PR is addressing. So at the moment, you have to write like CSS selectors to do some of that. This PR that is, I think it's in line to be in Rails 8.2, will add assertions like the one you use in system tests. So that it's much easier to use request specs that give you the same level of confidence that your DOM is how you want it, without having to go all the way to using system specs or feature specs. But yeah, my recommendation is test, again, going back to the conventions, going back to the controllers. For every controller, create a request spec for each action, test all the cases that action should have. If it's an index, add some pagination fixtures or factories to test maybe all the filters and whatnot. But because you're always working with HTML, it's rare that you have to test all the clicky JavaScript stuff because it's just not worth it. If you use stimulus and you want maybe some keystrokes, then the thing reacts. That's when you want some like system specs. But for the most part, if you again keep like close to the platform, most things you don't really need to test. Test just a request. Like for example, in these things, I would test just this request that when I ping the customer insights endpoint, like the action, I get the name and the preferences and whatnot. But I wouldn't test that clicking a button that is part of the platform, that uses command and command 4 that is part of the platform, that uses popover that is part of the platform. I wouldn't test any of that. That's the platform. You wouldn't test a div. You wouldn't test a span. You wouldn't test a dialog. You wouldn't test a popover. So you reduce the surface area.
You have to link those two things, so there's a definite chance that you make a mistake.
Yeah, but
And a test catches the regression there. Or
yeah, but you can do that through a request spec. You can find the elements and make sure they're correct. You don't need to actually go spin up a browser. That'll take, I don't know, 10 times more than a request spec. So your CI will be slower, your cost will be higher. We will get more money in BuildKite. So maybe that's not my recommendation. Maybe just use system specs. But yeah, that's definitely a concern. That's where you need to be more conscious of maybe wrap that as a helper, wrap it as a component, test the IDs. That sort of takes you into maybe a different place where you test not the actual interaction, but the component itself. That is a frontier that I think it's like as robust in Rails yet as it should be, but you can get away with a lot without having to do any of that.
Because yeah, that's what we were doing at Fresher. We were testing every single step so that if you like refactor, do anything, a test would break, and you're like, okay, well, we know it's there. But it was Capybara, so like it was quite expensive.
Yeah.
But we are not using.
Like you can get a very similar level of confidence without having to do spin up a full browser to do the test. My recommendation is to test every controller action for the HTML it returns, that you make sure that it works, and just maybe have per feature or per area of your application a single feature spec that just clicks the hell out of everything, types in every field, but it's just a single test. You spin it up once, do the whole thing, maintain a story, maintain a journey, not multiple system specs for just little bits. At least that's how I'm trying to push BuildKite towards, where I'm trying to push it towards.
He sort of have to run to us.
Oh, yeah. In regards to the sockets, action cable, have you had any limitations around that? Or have you heard about any cable? Have you considered it, I guess, for the big company?
Yeah, that is super interesting. I don't think I have reached that scale. And in BuildKite, we do use WebSockets. We use action cable. We don't use any cable yet. And it's pretty massive build kite. So it requires a huge scale to go to something like that. So yeah, no, I think our stuff runs on Redis. This app runs on Action Cable. On Solid Cable. One gotcha. This took me an hour yesterday. So if you're going to set this up, beware of this comment in the cable YML setup. It says the async adapter only works within the same process. The async adapter is what you get by default when you run the Rails app. Change it because it's gonna be pain. It was like an hour. I was preparing this yesterday and I was just stuck on this for an hour or so. And I'm like, fuck, I need to do something else.
This gotcha has existed since Action Cable was introduced.
No. I think this is fair.
The first time I used Action Cable, yeah, it was the same issue. It's like, oh, it was async adapter and it was, let's go in a different process. Why is my field not updated?
Yeah. So the answer is just to use the proper setup. Use like separate databases for your cable stuff, and that's it. If you're playing with stuff, if you're doing like a real thing at work, like do it properly. But for this, if you're gonna play with this stuff, know that you have to set up the database. Like in reality, just copy and paste whatever production has, and that works.
I was just going to mention that what I started doing at work was whatever is my production environment, except for variables and secrets and whatnot, goes in the development. So I try to mimic the development close to staging, close to production, because Action Cable is a pain.
Yeah, this like setting once it's set up, it's beautiful. But setting it up sometimes is like so many like paper cuts.
Other gotchas, especially if you are separating your Rails app from your Action Cable server, unless the Action Cable server runs as part of your Rails app, everything works seamlessly. You remove Action Cable from the Rails app, and then all of it goes loose.
Yeah, fun times. Matt?
That was sick. That was my mic check. I wasn't sure how it would come out. I see that you used in a few spots like a lazy loaded turbo frame that has its content filled in by another controller, not the controller that's rendering the main page. You're like dispatching out to a separate controller. That's something that I've deliberately avoided, but having seen how nice it turns out here, I'm tempted to reconsider that stance. But like at BuildKite in larger applications, have you experienced any confusion that's due to the fact that different parts of the page you're looking at are satisfied by different controllers? And for background, my historical objection has been that like I want a page to be explainable by one controller. I don't want to have to traipse through many controllers to explain what's on a page. But at work, what's been your experience with separating things out into different controllers?
I think it goes back to this graphic that I plagiarized. As you go further to the left, into frames, into streams, it becomes a bit more painful. For us, it's been a huge enabler. Like that story about the React component that renders turbo frames, that then renders other turbo frames that renders like that thing. It decomposes the pages a lot, but it just gives us so much liberty. Performance-wise, like I didn't get into that here, but I can very quickly show you that. If I refresh this page and I remove this lazy loading, I didn't explain this, I'm sorry, but if I remove all the lazy loading in this page, I think that's everything, you'll see that I'm gonna fire a request for all the models that I just put on the page. So now your server, you DDoS yourself again because you loaded absolutely everything. You don't have to, you could do a lot of this stuff inline. I did it for the purpose of like showing the power. But like, I don't know, having, depending on how many pages you have here, having, I don't know, 50 forms hidden behind something and 50 details and 50 popovers hidden, doesn't make a lot of sense. Your request is going to be much faster. You prevent N+1s. I think there's a lot of value in doing that. So for contrast, if we do this, I'm missing one, but you'll see that the details and the other ones are gone. So yeah, I do understand that it's easy to just like handle a single page that you have everything in it.
I mean, you could still lazy load within a page. I think I mean more architecturally, and like as far as maintainability goes. Do you find it easier to split up a single page into many controllers?
Yeah, yeah, I do.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, well, that's my preference.
Shot then.
Yeah, like
nice.
I like when if I go to the routes, like this, like being able to explain the pieces of a page with the routes like this, with the controller like this, to me just makes every problem much smaller. The page is more complicated because it has more moving parts, but each part is a tiny controller that you could be able to build as a junior on your first week using Rails. That's kind of the feeling that I'm after when I do this. Every controller should be as sort of like single purpose as possible. That's why I prefer this instead of a controller with many instance variables or a presenter that has to coordinate a bunch of queries. If I can decompose it, I'd rather do it.
Makes sense.
What the views look like in the file tree?
Oops, yep. So views, cancellation.
I have an anecdote just for that particular question. Our dashboard that we make loads a lot of different data in different sections, and we use the Turbo Lazy, like breaking it up, which enables us to do very specific caching. So rather than having to put all your caching logic in one function, each of the sections has its own HTTP lifecycle. So you can essentially have most of your dashboard cached at each of those layers and then invalidate just the bits that you need to when the data changes. So in that aspect, it actually simplifies the logic by having those sections be turbo frame loaded.
Is there a property in the console so you can see what the source is? Because I think I can understand what he's saying. You can have like 20 controllers touching different things and you're trying to figure out what's telling what.
I'm missing one somewhere. I can't tell which one. Let's do this.
Say you click on Linda and you inspect the element, would you put the source property on it?
This source. Yeah. So let me just close this. By the way, details. You press escape. It works. You don't have to code that at all. The dialog does that for you. But yes, if we go to the frame for this, the URL is there. Yeah, the URL is always there. I want to show you something today, but I couldn't. There's a new project called Reaction View. This is going to go into Rails, I think. Don't tell anyone. This is a new set of developer tools that actually make it even easier to navigate to those things. So Reaction View, it's broken at the moment. I installed it. It broke my app. There's something wrong. I'll tell Marco. But it sort of gives you a little menu here where you can click, and then it shows you where every piece of your page comes from. So you can click. It takes you to the partial. It takes you to the frame. It takes you to the whatever. It's beautiful. It's part of the tooling that we've been missing in Ruby and Rails for a long time. So we're going to have a huge jump in Rails 8.2 with this tooling. So yeah. Yeah. So you could enable the little dev tools here. Click on the partial name pops up there. You click on it, take it to your thing. It's beautiful, yeah. Yeah, I'm sad that we couldn't use it today, but still like in beta.
Thank you so much for the demo. This is actually like really relevant for our team right now. And thanks, Maria, for taking us. I'm curious how this compares to something like HTMX. I don't know if you've used that before and how it's different to this.
I haven't used it. They share a very similar path, the two projects. So HTMX was called Intercooler back in the day. It sort of came about at the same time as Turbo Links and as PJAX, so that same era. They are like sibling projects in a way. The reason why, well, I've stuck to Turbo and Turbo Links because that's what I learned. That's what I became an expert on. But the concepts are very similar. HTMX provides much lower level APIs. So Turbo provides lots of abstractions on stuff that HTMX gives you like the super low level pieces for. That's the only difference that I know, but I haven't used it, so I wouldn't be able to comment. But spiritually, same thing. If you use Rails, the difference is that Turbo is fully integrated into Rails. So you get all the helpers, you get all the action cable already set up. I didn't show you this, but I'll show you very quickly. And I say this every time someone asks a question, I'm sorry. But something that I didn't mention, remember how we talked about the connection between the server and the browser for the cable updates, blah, blah, blah. Again, a custom element called Turbo Cable Stream Source. So that's how you can tell, okay, Rails is giving me all the configuration to make that connection out of the box. If you use something like HTMX, you might have to build this because I don't know that they have any WebSocket sort of enabled stuff. They stay more on the browser side of things. Because this is Rails, Rails plugs every piece together. But yeah, this is sort of like how, like this stream channel name is a signed ID of the name that we gave to the broadcast. So that's how those two things are connected. So yeah, these kinds of things you won't get with HTMX. They're not the most critical things though. But if you want super high reactivity, you get it for free.
Thank you.
All right.